What's going on with his cop pizzle? I know what everybody's going to want to talk about on this episode 3. But it wasn't shown in this episode, and that's the little teaser for episode 4. And when we see how that gets played out fully, we'll talk about it next week, and we'll see how it really goes down. Okay, I'm not going to let HBO and how it was edited for a teaser. I'm not going to jump to conclusions, but we'll see. Look, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. This episode was all about free agency. I loved how they did the little card, the little poker. How they edited all that together. That was really cool. Look, I don't want to keep harping on Saquon. I don't want to keep talking about Saquon. Saquon's a Philadelphia Eagle. But, the conclusion on this is I don't believe Saquon wanted to be a New York Giant any longer. Mara obviously tried to force Joe Schoen's hand in keeping Saquon, which means he probably was willing to give Saquon Barkley more money than what he was asking for to try to maintain him because of popularity. I think it's funny because we always make fun of Jerry Jones because Jerry Jones for the Cowboys, he's always out front, always in the media, always talking, always. He's out. He's putting his face out there. Mara, on the other hand, and I got nothing but respect for Mara and his family, but the way he's doing business, he's not putting himself out there, but he clearly wants to have a say in this. And I think if he felt that way, he should have done what Jerry does. He should put his name out there and say, "Listen, we want to try to maintain Saquon. I don't know all this hiding behind the door and sneaking around and all that stuff. Like, put your face on it. If you want Saquon, you should have came out and said Saquon. At the same time, look, did Saquon ultimately work for the Giants? His career. Obviously we got a playoff win, but there was not enough there, and I'm disappointed that Saquon wanted to play for the Eagles more than he did the Giants. And I don't wish anything bad upon him. I appreciate his time with the Giants, but I hope we kick his ass twice a year for the next few years. Just being honest, I hope he fails tremendously, if I'm being quite honest with you. Daboll and Shane, when they were talking about needs, they clearly indicated that offensive line was a very important thing that needed to be improved. That's why I'm not ready to talk about next week, because if you're in the room and Joe Schoen asks Daboll and says, "Hey, Daboll, what's the most important thing that we need to improve?" Well, there's your opportunity right there for Daboll to say, we need to improve the quarterback position. I didn't see him do that. I saw him say we need to work on offensive line, most notably the interior of this offensive line. And so, obviously Runyon, it looked like we were going to lose out Runyon to the Jets. Got Rodgers connection there. And so ultimately we were able to get him. So that's great. I think he's going to be a great player for us. But it was interesting that the Giants really emphasized, the offensive line, and then, the Burns trade. It seemed like that was something that was extremely stressful for Shane. You can tell that the two most stressful things, this is why, again, I'm not ready to talk about episode 4, because it looks like to me the most two stressful things on Joe Schoen this offseason was the running back position, most notably Saquon Barkley, and trying to get this Brian Burns trade approved or done. And so, obviously, he lost out on Saquon, but he got the Burns deal. They've emphasized protecting the quarterback, rushing the quarterback, and, a lot of this episode was right there in Joe Schoen's office. And so I'm going to say this. This has nothing to do with the Giants. This just has something to do with me personally. I Joe Shane's personality to me isn't one that I think I would blend with. I don't think him and I would. I don't think I would get along with Joe Shane in everyday living. I think me and Brian Dable would get along. I think him and I would get along. I think Brandon Brown. I've seen guys like Brandon Brown, the way he carries himself. I've seen that characteristic before. So I think he's a pretty cool. Joe Shane. I'm not saying he's not smart at his job. I like that we're getting this insight. There's just something about him, backwards hat. I don't know, dude. There's just something about Shane that's throwing me a little bit off. Like, I don't know. I can't really describe it. I wish I could put a better. I wish I had the vocabulary to say how I really feel on it, but I can't really put words to it. But I just don't. There's something about him that's just a little bit off to me that I don't quite get about him. Maybe somebody in the comments can help me elaborate a little bit more. Maybe you feel the same way. There's just something throwing me off. That's not to say he's not doing a good job. It's just there's something about his personality that I'm just not jiving with. Dable, on the other hand, I like his personality. I kind of like, I've enjoyed that. And we'll see about, we'll see about how episode 4, I know he was the one that said something. We'll see how that plays out. But this episode was all about free agent. It looks extremely like a stressful thing. I have mentioned this before in previous years, making content of a lot of us always assume that it's easy to get guys to come play for the Giants. Why would he not just sign this guy? Why would he not get this guy? Well, clearly you're at a hurry up and wait to see a thing, and you don't know if what you're hoping happens. And so what happens is, like Brian Burns, for example, if that deal wouldn't have happened, the Giants clearly had an alternative route. But as he said, that alternative route was having to be pivoted and was going out the window because free agency was actively going on. So if the Burns trade doesn't happen, we may end up with somebody else that we really didn't want. I mean, that's part of free agency that you don't see, that we as fans don't get to see. So that part I thought was really interesting. The fact that, look, you can have a plan all you want to, but you really don't know if it's going to get fucking executed or not. So, I thought that was, that's pretty stressful. I could see that being stressful, and I could definitely have a little bit more compassion now for general managers. I'm sure there's a lot of general managers out there that got fired, for a bad season. But if they look back at their previous off season, they said, look, if this would have happened and this would have happened, we wouldn't have had that season. I totally get it, man. I totally understand how frustrating that could be and how unfair, honestly, that could be as well. But look, the Giants seem to be making a lot of decisions together as a group. Again, I was a little bit taken back by Mara coming in there and trying to bully his way into, we need to try to keep Saquon. We need to try to keep, no shit. Like, we get it. Like, he is a very popular player. That's obviously understood. And Shane didn't budge, and he had a plan. So I can totally respect Joe Shane on that and his decision on what he felt was best. So, they wanted to keep Tyrod Taylor. They decided, Tyrod signs elsewhere, and we bring in Drew Lock. I actually found that to be surprising. I didn't think that the Giants were going to want to maintain Tyrod, which, by the way, this is going back to the other 4th episode. They had said, look, this quarterback room is pretty much going to be the same, which, we'll see how episode 4 comes out. But nevertheless, they pivoted and they got Drew Lock, and I actually kind of find that to be interesting that it seemed like they preferred Tyrod Taylor over Drew Lock. But anyways, they got that. And look, they almost got everybody that they wanted in the offensive line, but they got the majority of the guys that they wanted. So anyways, another great episode. Obviously, Singletary was signed right after Saquon deal, but obviously Saquon seemed to be somewhat of a priority. Not the, it had its limits, but, you can see where plans fell apart and they had to say, okay, well, we got to go this route. And so now it's going to be really interesting when you watch this season. Like, if, for example, if Singletary has a huge year, right? If Singletary ends up having a big year for us, we're going to look back on this and say, man, they stressed out about Saquon way too damn much, right? If Brian Burns doesn't have a good year, we're going to say, wow, they made all this fuss and it didn't even pan out, right? If the offensive line is not good again, once again, their plan of attack just didn't work. So we're going to be able to take all this information and then put it into the regular season and see how that all really came together. So it's going to be fun following the Giants. But that's my thoughts on episode 3. It seems like episode 4 is going to produce some fireworks, and so we'll be here for it. And look, I mean, if I got to eat crow, I'll eat crow, right? I mean, there's nobody else does it. Nobody else does it better than me. And at the end of the day, we're gonna see what it is. Okay, so we'll catch you next time.